Yep, Donald Trump last night talking about another investigation into him. That would be the Mar-a-Lago raid and the documents that he apparently was trying to keep the FBI from getting. That's the accusation. And now they've got Secret Service agents who are being compelled to testify by this special prosecutor against someone they're supposed to protect. It's crazy. Yesterday, 34 charges against Donald Trump, but no bombshells, Kevin. Pretty much what we expected. A couple transactions, payments to women, and also to that doorman at Trump Tower. The two women who have alleged to have had affairs with Donald Trump. So these were deals to keep them quiet, paid for by Trump's attorney at the time. Trump reimbursed his attorney, classified it as legal fees. This district attorney says, nope, those are actually campaign contributions.
Yeah, I had Donald Trump in his press conference saying, I committed no crime here. With this whole Stormy Daniels things, but he also took the opportunity to get in front of what he thinks are probably future charges, saying he made the perfect call in Georgia and that the confidential records were not confidential because as soon as he walked out the door with them, they became unclassified. Covering it all. Join us now is Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist, also an attorney and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Good morning, Roshini. How are you?
Good morning, Kevin and Tom. Yes, he really had a laundry list, quite a litany of both allegations against the Biden administration, against his accusers, as well as kind of checking off all of these things from way back that he's either been accused of or investigated over. It was quite, when he started off, before he really brought us back into election type of things, election vote counts, I thought this is actually a very well thought out, reasoned speech, so to speak. So it was fascinating to me as someone who gives speeches, writes speeches, evaluates speeches, to kind of see how it was crafted.
Right up until he called the special prosecutor a lunatic.
Yeah. I mean, some of the language choices I might not have gone with. But
I agree with you. We talked about that earlier. He looked pretty comfortable and confident, and then he kind of got into his old ways, talking about the judge hates him and all of that stuff. Do you think you're a lawyer? If you were talking to Donald Trump after the arraignment, after they had a chance to look at all of this stuff, would you have been very optimistic with Donald Trump, saying, "Boy, they didn't bring much. I think we can beat this"?
Well, I don't know that I would have been optimistic, but I would have definitely talked through, and as I am, now with the two of you, like really looking at what could be, what could be grounds for the conviction. Like you can have charges. You can throw things out there, but then you really are supposed to show evidence in a trial situation that would convict someone. And yeah, the number 34 does sound like a lot, and that is a lot, but each one is connected to a payment, and there were multiple, charges that could be accompanied with each of those payments. So that's where we get into this 34 number. And I mean, I think what it was is something like 11 different payments. There were maybe 3 charges connected to each, plus one other charge for something. So, and the thing that's really the problem here when it comes to the charges is this is initially state law, and to get it into the federal zone and to get it even out of the misdemeanor zone into the felony zone, you need a few layers that need to happen. So a lot of proof needs to be shown. I mean, you can have charges, look, Kevin, someone could show up at your door tomorrow and say, hey, here's an indictment, Kevin, and grand jury has found this against you. Well, that's all well and good until we get to a trial, and actually we need evidence to prove to a judge or jury that you did something. And so those are some of the layers that we have to all remember as Americans and in our system of justice. And I'm still a little dumbfounded by the whole thing. I bumped into actually a supervising attorney of mine from my past on Friday, and we were talking about just the very, should this have even happened? We were both pretty flabbergasted that this was coming out, and over $130,000 in hush money. And so this is really what the core of it is. If you're going to bring these charges, can you actually show the evidence that this happened in this way, as you say, and as you're charging out? So it's going to be interesting to watch. And, there's also a chance this won't even go to trial.
Yeah, so you bring up the 11 different payments that were made, but weren't those actually just installments to pay off the initial payment of $130,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, Tom. They're reimbursement payments. So it's not like, okay, Donald Trump, you did this with China, you did this with Mexico, you did this over here with Florida, and we got you. It's like you broke all these different campaign finance laws that rise to the level of a federal crime and election laws and election fraud. So that's what, the reality check here is what I'm trying to bring to the table and help people understand. And the other piece, and you may have talked about this already this morning, but the other piece of his statements yesterday that really got to me and is as far as like good for him is if it's actually true. I wasn't watching all of these elections closely when some of these different people in New York or other elections were campaigning where they ran on, I'm going to bring down Trump, I'm going to charge Trump, I'm going to put Trump in jail. It is absolutely just reckless to be saying something like that in an election situation when you don't have proof in front of you, especially against someone who used to be the president of the United States. And I don't care who the person is that held that office. That's just something you don't do in a campaign. So he was smart, I guess, tactical maybe, in saying those kinds of things, because what he's trying to do, although I don't think he should have been calling anyone crazy or lunatics or things like that, but it's really trying to attack the judgment of these attorneys and, federal attorneys that are charging him. And that was an interesting tactic and that he took in this speech yesterday.
Yeah. So, but Alvin Bragg, you mentioned when he was running, he's like, I'm going to bring him down. He didn't even have proof then of a crime, but does he even have proof now? Because you're an attorney. There's a ton of payments that attorneys make. These are reimbursable payments to whatever the costs are, knowing full well the client is going to pay them back. This is what it seems to me this is. Michael Cohen made a payment. He expected Donald Trump to pay him back. It was reimbursable. How do you make the connection that actually those legal fees are a campaign political contribution? How does that connection be made?
Yeah, Tom, you're absolutely right. What we would need is to see a check that basically said, okay, here's a check to Michael Cohen, reimbursement for whatever documentation you have, the total $130,000. Well, here's 30,000 of it, and it was labeled somewhere as a legal fee for my campaign or a campaign fee, a campaign expense. But again, we need that evidence. We need some documentation that shows that. You can't just have accusations. There have to be, or coincidental kinds of things. The numbers add up to this. We actually need evidence. And that is what we have to, if you're going to take this to trial, Mr. Bragg, that's what you absolutely need to show a jury or a judge, and especially the American people. And that is why I say, well, there could come a space, a time where all of this, again, let's not even forget about all of the taxpayer dollars that are going into this, which just drives me nuts. You have to actually have evidence, and it is called the documentation, seeing, whether it's canceled checks with labels and columns, a spreadsheet that says this exact amount was for this, that was a campaign fee, legal fee, my legal fee for the campaign. Come up with the different words. You have to have that connection.
I don't think he convinced a lot of people yesterday. We'll see what happens in court. Appreciate your perspective. As always, Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.